The Chaser Report is recorded on Gadigal land.
Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. This is the Chaser Report.
Hello and welcome to another week of the Chaser Report with Dom and Charles.
Now, Charles, I want to bring you up to speed on some news that happened last week that people may have missed. It's some small but fun stories.
Ooh, okay.
Which you can conclude that either we're just very thorough, we don't want you to miss anything. And so we decided not to talk about today's top news story.
No.
We just want to fill in a few little interesting tidbits from last week before we get to the big story today, which we'll do tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or we pre-recorded this last week because, frankly, we're a bit tired and we've got kids on school holidays this week and stuff like that. Anyway, it's one of those two things. So on the menu for you today, sir, some amazing stories. The COVID-19 lab leak theory that Sherry Markson of the Sky News and the telly and so on has been, she wrote a whole book about this thing.
Yes.
Apparently it's very clearly bullshit now.
Ooh.
A new creepy claim about Donald Trump and his relationship with his daughter Ivanka.
Oh.
That's going to be quite gross. We might leave that till the end. We haven't talked about the Democratic presidential candidate taking on Joe Biden,
Yes.
RFK Jr., the child that if RFK were alive to see, he'd be probably willing to disown at this point. He's made some extraordinary claims about vaccines, even bizarrer than the ones that we had before. Then there's Thames Water in London. Apparently being owned by Macquarie Bank's not so good for a water utility. They're getting ready for it to collapse.
Ooh.
And my final and favourite story of the week, chaos at the New Zealand feral cat hunting contest.
Ooh.
All of that smorgasbord after this. Where will we start, Charles? Shall we start with the lab leak theory? Because this people have been banging on about this for ages. Even Jon Stewart at one point popped up on Colbert and shocked him quite a bit by making all these claims about how clearly COVID came out of a lab because the Wuhan Institute of Virology was there and they were doing gain of function research and so on. He's going, of course, there's a lab there, therefore it came from the lab. And look, none other than Sherry Markson has been peddling this one for a while. Were you ever convinced by this theory?
I always thought it was just a tiny bit racist to sort of assume that Chinese labs, because they're all, have got various biohazard standards. And, that a Chinese lab would be and it had quite a high biohazard standard. Like it had gain of function research and stuff going on, which is quite a big threshold.
Yes.
And I always thought it was a little bit racist to go, well, if it was being done in China, then they probably just, walked out the door and went to the fish market and
there were no
spread
biosafety
it.
standards.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a bit racist and it's also a bit ignorant because the place with absolutely no biosafety standards is the market.
Yeah.
It's very clear that the Wuhan Central Market had all these...
If you want to be racist in the right spot.
I mean, I've seen photos, they had all these cages on top of each other where clearly the viruses could travel from one animal to another.
Yes.
But not in the lab. And here's the thing, is that it's the chicken and the egg thing. Because, okay, sure, there was a Wuhan Institute of Virology there that was doing this research. But the reason why it was there is because that's where all the bats were that are the sources of all the coronaviruses. I mean, we know that coronaviruses come from bats. Wuhan has this sort of massive bat population. So that's apparently why they put the lab there in the first place.
Yes.
Rather than the other way around. So anyway, what's happened is there's been a big report come out. The US intelligence services together released a summary of the intelligence that they collected. And basically there's no direct evidence that it came from that.
But hang on, just because there's no direct evidence doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Well, you can have a conspiracy theory if you want to, but basically what they're saying, there was no evidence that the Institute of Virology was working on this, that there was any biosafety problem, that anything happened at all.
But wasn't there sort of a suggestion that everyone got sick in November, like who was working at the Institute got sick with some mysterious illness? Or is that just rubbish?
Or they might have gone to the market. But here's the thing. There's no evidence that, and this is what they would have had to have found, that there was some sort of problem, incident that led to some crisis.
Yes. But what about the fact that China notoriously covers everything up all the time to make Xi Jinping look good?
Yep, that's right.
It's true. They literally have a mass infrastructure of covering things up.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
And hilariously, for months, you remember they denied having any COVID problem at all.
Yes. So how can you sort of prove it either way? Like, did they ask the Chinese government, is there any direct evidence? And the Chinese government went, no, there's none at all.
No, so this is the US Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and they said,
who are also notoriously reliable people. I mean,
never cover anything up.
Their stuff on Iraq turned out to be completely true, Dom.
So what they said was, look, okay, there were scientists who fell ill before the first documented infections. There was coronavirus research by the PLA going on there.
And gain of function.
But we can't say that there's no smoking gun, is what they're saying.
Right.
But
because the smoking gun got buried.
got buried. I don't know. When you look at the photos of the animal market, though, it's always seemed vastly plausible that would be how you'd get, bats infecting pangolins, all that kind of stuff.
And I remember during one of the lockdowns, I read quite an interesting piece about how there's nothing in the sequence of DNA that makes you go, oh, wow, like that's definitely man-made. Like,
that's a function.
It's entirely possible that all those extra functions were gained by the by, naturally.
Through the Mother Nature decided to really fuck us up.
Yeah.
So we don't know. The thing is, there's no evidence that it was, and that's what I mean. I don't know whether the investigators read Sherry Markson's book about this. But no, look, I mean, it's always seemed more plausible that it was the way that we know that coronaviruses happen, which is transmission between different species, and that's how bird flu and all a lot of the other coronaviruses have gotten to us.
I mean, I personally think my theory is more plausible, which is that it was designed by pharmaceutical companies to boost their profits.
Well, that I'm sure that various people have accused Pfizer of developing it.
Yeah. Oh, no. Well, I think probably, Robert Kennedy Jr. has touted that theory on his election.
I think he has.
Hasn't he?
Yeah, well, let's go to Robert Kennedy Jr. This is the fringe candidate who's been going around. The son of former Attorney General RFK, who was JFK's brother, who was assassinated. He's been going around basically having an amazing roundup of vaccine skeptics. He went on with Joe Rogan for I think 3 hours, and he had a round table last week with some amazing superstars of misinformation. And among the claims that was made, he said that Spanish flu, you remember, they don't call it that anymore because it's not it wasn't actually nothing to do with Spain. The great influenza epidemic, they call it now.
The great influenza epidemic that's associated with Spain.
He said, well, apparently it's because Spain didn't get it because they weren't part of the war.
No, it's because Spain actually had fairly open disclosure.
Oh, that's right.
About people getting it. So
now you're quite right. Everyone else
covered it up. Yeah, that's right.
So yes, it was. They were the honest ones.
They were the honest ones.
With it.
Yep.
So he reckons that was caused by vaccine experiments, the whole of that.
All right, so exactly as I predicted.
Yep.
It was.
Yep, that's right.
It was Pfizer.
It was Pfizer. He also says HIV was caused by vaccines and Lyme disease.
How does he explain that HIV, like there was no technology at all available when HIV started happening?
There were vaccines.
Yeah, but...
The vaccines did it. They just did it.
Right, but... It was years and they still haven't developed a vaccine for HIV. That makes no sense, that conspiracy.
Well, the other thing is he's one of the many...
Like if you're going to have a conspiracy theory, at least have some sort of internal logic to it.
Why would you bother doing that?
Because then it's a more convincing conspiracy theory.
But then there's also these people, including him, who believe that AIDS is not caused by HIV, that that's a lie. So when we talk about HIV/AIDS, HIV is the virus you get and AIDS is the disease that follows.
Yes.
A bit like SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19. He says, no, it's not. They're not related at all. RFK's theory is that AIDS is not caused, this is a lovely man, Charles, not caused by HIV, but by a gay lifestyle and the use of poppers. That's his theory.
Oh, right, okay. So don't do amyl nitrate,
so that's
kids.
why
it'll give you AIDS.
That's why a lot of people support him, because he's just out and out homophobic.
On the one hand, you could say, who is this strange nut job and why is he getting any prominence at all? On the other hand, you could say, if your father and uncle were both shot in the face, or actually was the Robert Kennedy wasn't shot in the face, he was shot in the stomach by Jack Ruby, wasn't he?
Yeah. No, Sirhan.
Shot to death, right?
Jack Ruby killed Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oh, that was okay.
Sirhan killed RFK.
Right. And your aunt was lobotomized.
Yeah.
Your other uncle killed a woman in a car accident or something, Chappaquiddick.
Yeah. And your cousin died in a plane crash.
Your cousin died in a plane crash. You might just think that there's more, going on than there perhaps is. The conspiracy theory, if there was a sort of CIA conspiracy to kill most of your family, that maybe you would actually go, oh, yeah, actually I'll see conspiracies everywhere. Like maybe from his point of view, it's completely logical.
Well, I'm looking forward to later in the campaign him revealing that Lee Harvey Oswald was actually vaccinated shortly before killing JFK. But you're right. I mean, it's true.
Like poor
you got to feel a
guy.
bit sorry for the guy, don't you?
Why don't they just leave him alone?
Just let him in some little quiet because he's part of Camelot. He's got a famous surname.
Yeah. And is anyone what's his polling figures was?
Oh, not high, but Elon Musk had another event with him.
Facing off against an 82-year-old and it's not.
Apparently the only people who are supporting him are Republicans, but he's in double digits.
He's in double digits.
According to 538, the polls for RFK Jr. Before he's assassinated by someone who's been vaccinated, he's apparently got 15% approval ratings in the Democratic primary.
Oh my
possibly
God.
by Republicans who want to vote. But and 21% of respondents have a positive view or are positive for some virus. I don't know what sort of positive it is.
Maybe they're just wanting anyone but Joe Biden.
Yeah. Yeah, but also, if you're RFK Jr., given the likelihood of Biden getting killed by some virus, he'll be able to go, look, they got him. They got him. The vaccine company's got him.
Is America prepared to elect somebody who's then definitely going to be immediately assassinated, though?
Well, it's been a while since a presidential assassination. They've sort of taken that option off the table. It used to be. Remember when Obama got elected and we all thought he was going to be assassinated within a year or two, and that just never happened?
Yeah, okay. Oh, that's good.
But the good news is he doesn't think that infectious diseases are a threat to human health at all.
Oh.
No, he doesn't. If he becomes president...
Right. Which explains why he's so anti-vaccine.
Because he thinks it's all a conspiracy.
It's a grift. Yes.
It's all a grift. If he becomes president, he's going to end epidemiology research, defund Fauci. His pronouns are defund Fauci, I think, or lock up Fauci. And he's going to cut funding to medical journals. But his other idea, and this is one that's actually interesting. This is an idea that I think might be more popular. Have you heard of this concept of the corporate death penalty?
Oh, yes.
So if you're a company that does something really bad, defrauds the public, I don't know, let's say leaks confidential tax information to your clients.
Yes.
Then the company has to completely get dissolved. You can't keep it going. It just gets put out and
I love that idea. Yes.
Corporate death penalty.
That's a great idea. So the shareholders just lose everything.
Basically, yeah. And the employees have just got to go and do something else. To be fair, to be balanced, he has suggested that this apply to institutes associated with promoting vaccines.
Right.
So the National Institutes of Health, presumably, he wants to shut down Fauci's mob first.
Well, actually shut down all hospitals because all hospitals administer vaccines.
But as a concept, I don't mind the idea of the corporate death penalty. Also on his panel that he had in the past week was an osteopathic physician, which is a contradiction in terms, one of whom claimed that the COVID-19 vaccine makes people magnetic and connects them to 5G towers.
Yes.
So a fantastic person who presumably be the Surgeon General if RFK Jr. wins the election.
None of the medical advice contained in the Chaser Report should legally be considered medical advice. The Chaser Report.
See, I know that this all sort of feels harmless, but I feel like this, go back to 2014, 2015, this is exactly the sort of lighthearted conversation we'd be having about Donald Trump.
Yes.
And then he got elected.
Let's talk about Donald Trump. Do you remember that amazing op-ed article that New York Times published back in 2018 called "I am part of the resistance inside the Trump administration"? You remember that? There was an anonymous...
Yes. Oh, yes.
So the person who wrote it, unsurprisingly, has come out and outed themselves and is now selling a book.
And said, remember me? Remember me?
I'm not anonymous anymore. Buy my book. This is someone called Miles Taylor who was in there. And amongst the juicy details in the book, he made sexual comments, Donald Trump, about Ivanka that was so gross that his former chief of staff, John Kelly, had to say, "That's your daughter you're talking about there, Donald."
Oh, my God.
Yep. He talked about her breasts, backside, and what it might be like to have sex with her.
Ah!
John Kelly told Miles Taylor this and then said, "Trump is a very, very evil man."
Wow.
Who is also all of our boss and the president of the United States. Apparently there's just constant sexism in the Trump White House.
I am shocked.
Constantly calling staff sweetie and honey and talking about their makeup. the next president of the United States, ladies and gentlemen. So there you go. Now to my favourite story of the week, Charles, and we might wrap up after this. Have we covered all the little bits and pieces? I'm not sure we have, but I'm fascinated by this story. So in New Zealand, there's a problem with feral cats.
Yep.
Lots of feral cats around. So in North Canterbury, what they did was they had a competition to hunt for feral cats.
Yeah.
And the most you could kill, the most feral cats you killed, the better you did.
Yes.
Now, when animal welfare groups found out about this, it was just a bit of controversy. People said, because what was happening was people under 12, kids under 12 were entering the hunting competition.
Wow.
So they changed the rules and said, look, you can't hunt cats, but you can hunt other invasive pests if you're under 12.
What?
In the north of New Zealand, North Canterbury. And so there's video of kids with holding up dead animals as a result of this. And
because isn't that the whole thing that if you start getting a taste for killing animals as a child, you end up a serial killer? I'm pretty sure that's a thing.
Well, look, this is a live experiment happening over in New Zealand at the moment. And it all got a bit Lord of the Flies because in one of the videos, you've got kids holding dead feral cats in each hand, chanting, meat, 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 at demonstrations. So who would have thought that a competition with apparently 400 children competing
What?
would turn into Lord of the Flies?
So wait a minute, was it just for children? Was it pitched as a sort of...
Oh, it's for all ages, But
it went viral.
1,500 competitors were in the contest. 400 of them were kids. And they killed 243 feral cats and got a whole lot of wild deer mince and steaks for local food banks. So very healthy there in New Zealand.
Yeah. And in about 10 or 15 years' time, source of great true crime podcasts, I presume.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So win-win.
There's still feral cats out there, but I'm pretty confident these kids will sort this all out.
Yeah.
It's going to make a great Peter Jackson movie, isn't it, in the years ahead?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, they couldn't have murdered cats more than the movie did.
Yeah, actually, James Corden should really watch out if any New Zealand 12-year-olds come and visit him.
Our gear is from Road. We are part of the Iconoclast Network. Catch you tomorrow.